welcome into the Strike Zone. I am Joe Hunk inside tonight here at First Horizon Park, where we are every single Thursday. And yes, I am inside, like I just said. That's mainly because the Sounds are on the road taking on the Norfolk Tides. Next week, they're going to be back in town, 6-game series starting on Tuesday. And it's going to be an important one, and it's going to be a big one where a lot of fans are going to be making their way to First Horizon Park because it's the Gwinnett Stripers. Which means if you are a Braves fan as well as a Nashville Sounds fan, your worlds are about to collide, and you're about to see both right here on First Horizon Park's field. So make sure that you get down and you get to see and enjoy everything that's going to be happening around the stadium, including Throwback Thursday. Next Throwback Thursday, though, is going to be October. You can kind of piece together the way that I said that. It is going to be Oktoberfest here at the ballpark. There's an awesome giveaway where there's going to be a boot stein that they're going to be giving away to the first couple thousand fans that are going to be coming through the turnstiles, which we don't really use turnstiles now because it's 2022, but that still sounds pretty cool. So make sure that you're here for Throwback Thursday coming up next Thursday night. Now, tonight, for instance, this one is going to be extremely special. And I say this because when I first started working for 104.5 The Zone, one of the first people that I was told about was the man that's going to be joining us tonight. Now, there are a ton of people that live in the city of Nashville that I've found out about over the course of the last 365 to about 400 days that I've been on 104.5 The Zone. And, I mean, the city's pretty cool, so there's no surprised that there's a lot of actors and actresses and ball players and all of that do live here. But the man that's going to be joining me in just a little bit, I had no clue was from Nashville until I started working here. And then I read his book. And after reading his book, it was one of the most eye-opening and interesting experiences of my entire life, and one of the coolest books that I've ever read. And so I'm going to talk to him about it here in just a little bit. Now, these guys, okay, the guys that are directly behind me, you're probably saying, well, who is this? I'm hanging out in a suite tonight, and this is one of the awesome murals that you will see that are in every single suite, wherever you possibly would be staying when you do get a suite here at First Horizon Park to watch a game. These guys are really cool. I mean, they've been gone for a while, but they were really cool. 1885. This is the Nashville Americans baseball team. Who are those guys? Well, these guys were the very first professional baseball team to not only play in the city of Nashville, but also play right here on the grounds of First Horizon Park when it was Sulphur Dell. So the Nashville Americans started all of this. They only lasted about 2 years. But then after that, you had other teams that started to come in. You had the Blues, the Vols, and all these other baseball teams and professional baseball teams that played at Sulphur Dell before the transition to Greer, as well as the transition to the Nashville Sounds that we now know and love and everybody enjoys. And quite frankly, every single night that I show up at the ballpark, I'm pretty sure I go into the pro shop and I purchase something, because as I'm talking to you right now, I've already talked to my wife about a purchase that I'm about to make once the show is over with. So I just went ahead and warned her, hey, baby, just letting you know I'm going to come home with some stuff, because the Sounds have some legit gear down at the pro shop that you needed to enjoy. And I hope you actually did enjoy that tax-free weekend where you were able to get some a little bit more stuff based on everything that you were potentially getting. Now, I know the trade deadline wrapped up. Okay, we'll hit more on that in just a little bit, but we have got to get to our interview because he just got online now, so he's good to go. I've got the thumbs up, and this is going to be one of the most interesting and coolest people that I think I may ever talk to. Tim, I know we talked to Tim Dillard last week. He's one of the coolest guys. His ceremony on Friday night, even with the off and on rain that was happening throughout the day, was really cool. But hey, this man is a Cy Young Award winner, okay? That may be your first hint of who I'm talking about. And in fact, if you go back and you go into the Strike Zone podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, listen to the Tim Dillard interview that we did last week. And Tim and I kind of joked about this guy, but it was a little bit unintentional because Tim didn't know that he was going to be joining us this week. I kind of knew, but I didn't really know if it was going to be a 100% official thing that he was going to join us this week. But if you go on YouTube, one of the people that Tim Dillard made fun of while he was at Greer imitating Harry Carey is our next guest. And if you don't know who I'm talking about the one and only man of R.A. Dickey, the former Cy Young Award winner, 2012. He was an All-Star in 2012 as well. But he is a Nashville native. If you do not know, he's a Montgomery Bell Academy. He is a VFL. And the simple fact that I say, if you don't know, because I didn't know. I know that I'm still only, a novice to everybody that lives in the city of Nashville. But the fact that R.A. has been gracious enough to join us tonight is fantastic. And man, I just have to say thank you first off for hopping on to us with the strike zone. But at the same time, man, I mean, before we get into everything, bro, like what have you actually been up to right now?
I'm just a full-time dad, really. I get an opportunity now to, coach my own sons and be with my daughters. I've got 4 kids, 2 are in college at UT and Auburn. And then I have 2 boys that I get to be with. When you play for 21 years, you miss a lot of their lives, and so it's nice to be able to be with them.
Well, and I'm kind of glad that you did bring up that, and you talked about your kids first off. And I'm a dad. I have a 3-year-old. He threw out the first pitch with me last week when I was doing it here at First Horizon Park. But the one thing that always hurts, and the thing that I struggle with a lot, is I always have this fear that I'm like missing out on something, that, if I'm not at a practice, even though he's 3, if I'm not at this event that he's going to, or that him and my wife and his mom are going to, like, I always feel like I'm missing out on something. Was there ever a moment for you with your kids? And I mean, I know they're older now, but that you did feel like you were possibly missing out on anything? Did you ever think about that?
Well, I tried to flip the switch, when I played, so I wasn't distracted by much. But the day after or the day before, or even leading up to the game, sometimes if you've had a conversation and you felt like, golly, I wish I could be there to help with that, it weighs on you a little bit. But then you're also aware that you have a job to do, and if you get distracted from that, that could go badly. So, I think it all starts with just having a really good woman. My wife is spectacular when it comes to, just a support staff, or being able to chase my dream and help provide for our family and do all those things. You can't really do this life in a healthy way without a really strong woman. And, my wife has been that for our family.
Bro, I cannot agree with you more, and I love that you just brought her up and her strength in this, because I sometimes feel like that with my wife because of how much I am gone and doing everything, whether it's, it is doing, 3HL, whether it's the strike zone, Titans practices, Sounds games, all this stuff. And I do feel this way, but, I'll be honest, I didn't know much about R.A. Dickey in you before I actually read your book. And so if you've never read Ari's book, by the way, it's Wherever I Wind Up, and you need to go find it. And in the book, it talks about the journey and the minor league career and everything that you're going through. And a couple of weeks ago, we had Guy Lipscomb on from Belmont, and he just got drafted by the Guardians, and he was talking about his relationship with his girlfriend. And so we started talking, and I was like, bro, like, does she understand the life that she is kind of getting into if she continues to commit to this for the long haul? For you, was it tough to try to balance a relationship as well as being a minor league baseball player trying to get into the major leagues?
Well, I appreciate that question. That's a great question. I got married early, so I was drafted in 96, got married in 97. So the first 7 years of my career, I was in I was in the first 6.5. I was in the minor leagues from A ball up to Triple A, and Ann and I sat down one day, and just calculated all the different moves that we had over the years, and I think we lost count at like 47 moves.
Wow.
And so that kind of puts it in perspective. It's a difficult lifestyle, when you're chasing it. I think a lot of people see the All-Star game and see kind of some of these salaries that you see flash across the bottom of the ticker on ESPN and whatnot, but there's a whole different animal kind of poised behind all that, and that's the part that can be very, very difficult for a family. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was hard for Ann and I for a while, and doing long distance relationship, and as a married couple, and then you add kids into that dynamic, and then you add the stress of living on $1,250 a month in A ball, and so on and so forth, and it can put a lot of stress on your marriage. And so it's been quite the journey for Ann and I, and I think that's one of the things that makes us so close, is that we've had to endure things together, and that's been a great thing, but it's been a hard thing too.
Well, and the money thing, and the money thing is something I don't think enough people realize. The money that is not there in the minor leagues, and Tim and I talked about this last week. Was, look, man, it's everybody thinks about Juan Soto, and they think about that huge deal, and they think about the money that Giancarlo Stanton is getting and what Aaron Judge may get and all this, but that amount of money is so far away from anything that minor league baseball players are making, and the lifestyle, and I'm just so curious, like for you, I know that in certain cities, when you're talking about single A and double A, like, it's not just, hey, I got my own apartment, or hey, I got my own little studio place. Like there's multiple people and multiple players living in an apartment. Like, was it that way for you?
Oh yeah. I slept on couches, air mattresses, floors. You're just trying to scrape by. My first year of marriage, I had a roommate. So it's me and my wife and my roommate, and that's not necessarily a good recipe for how to start your marriage, but that's just what it took. That was our journey. And we ate peanut butter and jelly for a long time, man, and ramen noodles and everything else, just to try to stay on budget or try to, make it work. And then you introduce a kid, and next thing you know, you're being pulled in a lot of different directions, spending more and more time apart. So, look, I'll be the first one to say that the numbers that we're talking about for some of these superstars are crazy, crazy numbers. But there is a whole, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of players that never reach that pinnacle, that have to try to make it work, chasing their dream on, $35,000 a year, and that's before tax, just for the year, just for the months that they're playing. You're playing 6 months out of the year, 7 months out of the year, and then you're trying to hook on with a winter league team in Venezuela or Mexico, or I played in Puerto Rico, Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Hawaii in the winters, just to try to make enough money to keep going. So it's a grind, but ultimately you hang on to the hope that you're good enough or going to get the break that you need to be able to stick up there.
Well, and it is, man, and playing in all those extra leagues and stuff, like the wear and tear on your body, and I mean, like, I almost feel like there's a point in time where you start to look around, and you start to question a lot of things. But was there ever a moment, like, can you think of the first time that your wife, that your kids, or anything like that got to see you pitch for the very first time? Was there a moment where, like, you got to step up off the mound, and you knew where they were sitting, and you got to look up there and you got to see them, and you just kind of got like another little bit of energy of like, all right, look, man, this is why I'm doing it?
Well, that's a tough question, because they kind of came up with me through the minor leagues. I had, I think I was 26 years old when I had my oldest daughter, and, at that point they're just babies and you're trying to make it work. So I think that my thoughts were much more consumed with, I look up there and see my wife with a baby in a stroller. I got to think, I got to make diaper money here, man. I got to figure out a way to put baby food on the table, if you will.
Right.
And that was the motivation for me, is just as a provider. A lot of times I would kind of sink back into that. As they got older and as I had more success, it really was a blessing for them to get to come into the clubhouse and, eat lunch with me and go on the field and take BP when I was, in New York and Toronto and Atlanta and all my stops along the way, Seattle, when I was in the major leagues. And that was quite the blessing to get to share with them, because, they're not in the adult grind of it, but they miss their dad. They miss that parent that the family dynamic was set up to kind of give them. They miss that piece. And so it's nice to be able to include them as I got more and more successful in the major leagues.
All right, Dickey joins us right now, 2012 Cy Young Award winner. You went into the All-Star game as well that season in Kansas City. You've won a Gold Glove in 2013. But outside the state of Tennessee, because everybody that's at least a VFL and is a Vol remembers your time at Tennessee and how you pitched there as compared to how you got into the major leagues and became kind of a mainstay with the knuckleball. And the mental side of that, man, I know for me it's tough. And truth be told, I have extreme anxiety, depression, I'm ADHD. And I say all of those things because I try to put myself into your shoes. And I think to myself, how could I have that conversation with myself knowing that what I have done my entire life could be over? And there was a point in time for you where somebody had to sit you down and say, look, man, this isn't it. And I know you had to make that decision of throwing traditionally is not that. What was it like to sit and have this conversation with yourself, that this may be the end of my career as a baseball player?
Well, unfortunately, I think I had that talk with myself multiple times, not just one. I feel like I was on the precipice of, turning the next page and getting into the next chapter of my life away from baseball multiple times, and I kept hanging on to the hope that, I had something good to give to the game. And I was pretty, none of us are self-made men or women. We're all products of people who have loved on us in different and unique ways. And, I'm no different. I am the product of that as well. And so I had a lot of help along the way to keep encouraging me and to keep my hope up. I had, great, I leaned on Phil Necro and Tim Wakefield and Charlie Huff. And those were kind of on my speed dial throughout my knuckleballing career when I was trying to make the change from being a conventional pitcher who had run out of gas and just wasn't good enough anymore to becoming this full-time knuckleball pitcher with not a lot of experience. It's hard to forget who you once were and all that validation that you got from throwing 95 and being a college All-American and being on the Olympic team. All those are great things, but that does not sustain you. What sustains you is just a relentless work ethic and people who love you well. And I think those two things together help me.
Well, and the pitchers you mentioned, you're talking about some of the greatest pitchers of all time that you learned to pitch the knuckleball, and each one of them kind of, I know, taught you just a little bit differently about how you can try something different and all that. But was there ever a point in time when you sat with these guys and you said, hey, look, I've made this transition. I want to become a knuckleball pitcher. I'm looking to, learn how to pitch it, and you're the person that I'm coming to. Was there ever a moment in time where maybe all these guys said, look, you're absolutely crazy for trying to make this swap?
Well, I actually, the cool thing about my journey was, with Buck Showalter, who's now the manager for the New York Mets, was my manager at the time with Texas. And, he and I are real similar in a lot of ways. And I think he just identified that I had some things that weren't necessarily baseball related things from a skill set standpoint that would help sustain me in my journey to becoming a knuckleballer. Him and Oral Hershiser and Mark Connor, who's we called him Goose. He was the pitching coach, the bullpen coach at the time. And those three men really, said that they believed in what I could possibly become. And so that propelled my journey in 2005. But along the way, it was just, it's not like I could turn to my teammate and say, hey man, teach me how to throw this or teach me the mechanic behind this. So I was pretty alone in it for a long time until I kind of hooked up with Charlie and Phil and Tim. And they each came to me at different times in my career when I needed them. So if I wouldn't have learned, for instance, what Charlie Huff had to teach me, I would not have probably understood what Tim Wakefield had to teach me later on and so forth with Phil Necro as well. And so they came along at real interesting times and very fortuitous in the sense that, I had this capacity for understanding because I had already been with one knuckleballer, and then I got to mentor underneath another one, and then so on and so forth. So it was really quite a blessing to be able to get to be with those guys.
Something you went through with the Texas Rangers that I just could never imagine. And you talk about it in your book, and you talk about the experience of going to the ballpark at Arlington, which is where the Texas Rangers used to play, if you don't know, and going there, looking to potentially start your baseball career, looking to sign that contract. You're all excited. You're seeing the stadium that you believe that in a couple years you're going to be playing in, and then have happened to you with what happened to you. And, to turn it around to something here locally, it was just like Kumar Rocker, for instance. I mean, Kumar Rocker pitches for Vanderbilt in the College World Series, just like you were, has this amazing draft selection, goes into to get and do his medicals, finds out that something's wrong, doesn't get an offer from the Mets. I mean, it was an offer, but it was for $0, and then having to go right back to the drawing board. What was it like to think you were going into the general manager's office to sign this brand new contract with this huge signing bonus to being told, look, we're not offering you anything because of your medicals?
Yeah. That was a really hard moment for me. Cause you're young at the time. I mean, relatively young. He was probably, 20 years old. I was 20 or 21 at the time. And, you work your whole life thinking that you have kind of earned this opportunity, if you will, not only to play Major League Baseball, or at least try to get that opportunity to play Major League Baseball, but you're also, I grew up in a middle income family, and so that's a lot of money. A couple $1 million for him is a lot of money, and at the time, $850,000 for me was a ton of money. And so to have that taken away in a moment when you didn't do anything to warrant that is hard on a kid. And so it played with my mind for a while. I questioned a lot of things, if I would ever make it or if I would ever even get an opportunity. For me, it was a time of feeling real lonely and sad. And, it was important that, I had people around me to kind of help lift me up. At the time I was dating my wife now, and that was a big help. My faith was a big help, and having people come around me and really encourage me. And then ultimately, I got an opportunity, and I used that as motivation, just to kind of show people that I wasn't hurt and that, I was healthy and good and so on and so forth.
R.A. Dickey joins us right now. Montgomery Bell Academy, obviously VFL, pitched in the major leagues for the Rangers, I believe the Mariners, the Mets. Obviously is where you won your Cy Young. You became a Toronto Blue Jay. You were a Brave, and in all this, and I know that we've been serious for the last few minutes, but we talk about your book, and truth be told, I do Audible, and so I listen while I drive back and forth from work to home and from home to work. And bro, I've got to ask, what the heck with the Missouri River thing? Like, I just do, because I got to this point in the book, and I'm driving down the road, and my jaw is just wide open at whatever you thought that you could do in the Missouri River. Bro, what the heck, man?
Well, that was well, I'd say it was an unfortunate decision, but at the same time, it's like one of those things where you think it's one thing and it turns out to be something totally different, and then you look back on it in retrospect and you kind of can identify that was a turning point in your life. And for me, I was kind of on the way out. I was in Nashville Sound trying to make it up as a knuckleballer and hadn't had any real sustained time in the big leagues as a knuckleball pitcher, but was working my butt off trying to do it, and had gotten an opportunity with the Nashville Sounds right in my hometown, which at the time was a AAA affiliate of Milwaukee Brewers. And I was just having a horrible year. I started the year, 1-5 maybe, with like a 5.5 or 6 ERA, and certainly wasn't anything to write home about, and thought that I might be released maybe, or, I was one more bad start away from having to give somebody else an opportunity. And I knew that because I was older at the time. And we were playing the Omaha Royals and staying at a hotel that just rested right there on the banks of the Missouri River. And I remember going up the elevator and looking out over the river and thinking, I think I could swim across that thing. And, a teammate said, there's no way you can, like one of those things that you do with your teammates. And so the next day, to make a long story short, I was on the bank about to try to swim across and didn't realize that, it was not only one of the dirtiest rivers in the country, but it was also one of the fastest moving current rivers in the country. And the expanse was just too much for, I don't know if any man could get across it, to be honest. But, I went out thinking one thing, and I was trapped in the middle. And next thing you know, I thought my life was going to end because I was going to drown. And, you kind of got to read the book to know that I had a teammate that was integral in helping me there. And when I emerged from that experience, I just, felt an incredible relief and freedom, if you will, that, baseball really wasn't all there was, and that did a lot for me mentally. It kind of freed me up just to go out and not that I was apathetic, because I loved baseball and I cared and I worked hard, but the results of my baseball did not define who I was as a human being. And I had a real cool interaction, I felt, with God through that whole experience at the Missouri. And from then on, I ended up going 10-1 and becoming the PCL Pitcher of the Year that year. And that really was a springboard into everything that I did from there on out.
Was that the dumbest thing that you ever tried while you were in the minors?
I was probably, yes. I hate to say that I even have to think hard about it. It's so ridiculous that I have to think about it for a minute to tell you what the that might not have been the stupidest thing I ever did. But, when you're in the minor leagues and you're around a bunch of guys and you're constantly jockeying for position and pecking order and everything else, you want to think that you can do something nobody else can. And I think, that's the greatest enemy to us all, I feel like, is ego, and so I think there was some of that needed to be chipped away at throughout my minor league career for sure. And as I was becoming a major leaguer, just this idea that, I don't have to be the best. I just need to be the best of who I can be. Right. And so to really center on that was another big building block for me. And I became a lifelong learner, man. That's one of the lessons I learned is, I need to take my ego out. I need to understand that I'm not made to have all the answers, and it's okay to ask for help. And, and asking for help is an incredible opportunity to live a different kind of life. And for me, that was really important. That was the place I was in my career. And thankfully, I had people that were willing to pour into me in a real special way, both on and off the field. And what became of that on the field was really, really neat. But what happened off the field was a even better gift.
Okay, am I the only one that thinks there's a little bit more to this? Because look, you had to think for a second. Like, you actually had to stop and think. So is what are some of the dumb things? I mean, at least something you could talk about. I mean, obviously, again, I've been in the locker room. You've obviously been in the locker room. There are certain things you just don't talk about because they're just way too dumb. But what were some of the other dumb things that you did try?
Like maybe like jumping off cliffs where you don't know how deep the bottom is. I remember doing that a couple times, at places that we would go, because on off days we were looking for things to do, and we'd inevitably find something to get into, or like diving for golf balls in a pond in Florida that might have had alligators in it, trying to get a dozen Titleist Pro V1s or something. I mean, there are all kinds of stuff, man, that I did that I look back and think to myself, what were you doing, man? But it's part of growing up, and I'm fortunate that none of those things ever killed me, and I'm here today.
Well, look, and I know some of the things you just mentioned are in the book that you just talked about, but did I get the wrong book? Like, I'm genuinely curious, because again, I told you I listened to Audible, and so I'm driving up and down, and the way Audible works is, yes, they tell you what chapter you're on, but they also kind of give a countdown of how much of the book is left. And so I'm reading this book, and it starts off and it's like, oh, you have 2 hours left and 1 hour left, 30 minutes left. And I look down and it said 30 minutes, and I'm thinking, we're only in like 2009, 2010. He wins the Cy Young in 2012. Like, where is all of that? Like, what the heck? Why did the book end with the year before the Cy Young?
Oh, I know. It was. That's another kind of God thing, man. It was like when I had a good year for the Mets in 2010 and felt, just that I felt a pulling to share my story. I didn't, no one can ever predict that you're going to win a Cy Young. So I just started writing, and then got hooked up with an agency, and then, got hooked up with a ghostwriter. And next thing you know, we were just turning the book out. But the year it came out was the year I won the Cy Young. So there was all this momentum around tracking my season and wanting to know kind of this anomaly that was going on. And so it did a lot for the selling of the book. But it was not planned. I think I might have, I went back and wrote a kid's version of the book, because it's a pretty heavy book.
Yeah.
And I might have put an afterword in there about the Cy Young year. But yeah, there was no mention of it. It was much more of just a build up through my career in 2010 and 2011. All those diary entries from my year in 2011 were really fresh. I would go home after a start, and I would write those pages of the book just so the memories were fresh and the feelings were raw, and I could try to communicate to the reader some of the things that I was going through on the mound or in the game in 2011. But I should probably write another one just about the 2012 year, because that was a pretty special year.
Yes, like that's basically why I'm asking, because there's so much that you put into the first book that did lead up to the Cy Young year, like you were just talking about. But you have the Cy Young year, you have the mega deal that you got, you have your time with the Blue Jays and the Braves, all this stuff with your family. What would, if for instance, not hinting, but I'm just kind of saying, just trying to give you ideas, what would a book, a follow-up to wherever I wind up, what would it be about?
Well, I think for sure it'd have to include, the Cy Young season. And then, one of the things that I don't really share with many people, but I'll share with you because we're on the topic. When I was traded in 2012, you're rarely is a person ever traded from a team after they win the Cy Young award. Usually that team really wants you back, or, but for whatever reason, my age, the type of pitch I threw, they were trying to capitalize on a really, really good year. So I got traded to Toronto. And when I got to Toronto, obviously, if you're in the media, Toronto's a really big city. It's a lot like New York. There's a ton of media there and a lot of expectation, rightfully so, to come with trading for a Cy Young Award winner and giving up from your farm system a lot of really good pieces. And so a lot of the book would probably be about my time in Toronto and just trying to live up to being traded, and to, wanting to be all I could be for Toronto coming off that Cy Young Award year, only to be, I was probably above average in my time there, but I never won another Cy Young. And I think that a lot of people expected me to. There's a lesson in there for trying to live up to other people's expectations, right? And how to handle that, and what happens when you fail at that, and so some of it would be about that. And of course, I'd have to include my Braves year, which was one of the funnest years that I ever had playing baseball. And Brian Snicker, who is one of the best managers I've ever played for, and getting to play with Freddie Freeman and some really good players, some once in a generation type players. And then my transition into not playing, I think, would have to be in there as well, because it's a really difficult journey to do something for 21 years and to understand the dynamic from a family standpoint that comes with having to manage that. And then all of a sudden you're in a completely different world, where you're there all the time and your wife is used to making all the decisions, and then you come elbowing your way in, and then that whole dynamic and just what you find validation in once you retire, like all those things would be a real interesting read, I think, as well.
No, it would be. And that's the reason why I was curious about it, because there's so many more questions that I had. There were so many things that I wanted to know about you just from reading the book. And, it was a unique thing for me to go through this experience and to learn about you, because I said this before you came on, is like, outside of knowing that you won the Cy Young in 2012, like I didn't know anything. But I do have a tough question, and so I'm just preparing you now. Was there ever a point when all of this was happening, the finally getting up to the major leagues, having the dominating season, winning the Cy Young, becoming an all-star, winning a Gold Glove, after all this sort of stuff, was there ever a time that you actually looked at yourself and you said, am I worthy of this? Like, should all of this be happening to me?
Oh man, what a deep question.
Told you.
I'd say yeah, that was good. There was probably a small percentage of me that thought that maybe, but there was a much greater percentage of me that was just so thankful for how it was ending. And I knew that, I was kind of on the back half of, when I signed my contract, my extension with Toronto, which was my one big deal, I knew that was going to be kind of the downhill part of my career probably. And so I thought back over all those moments in the minors making nothing, and, fighting with my wife about not being able to buy a T-shirt or a pair of shoes because it wasn't in our envelope system,
Right.
Like it just, and it didn't make me feel any shame because I was able to do that. But at the same time, when you look around too and where you came from, you just want to do a good job of stewarding whatever it was that you were given. I think that, and because I was an older, my contract came, man, when I was, I think, in my 30s, obviously, and 35, 36 years old. I mean, I played until I was 43. So I had a whole different perspective than I would have had, which made it very, very cool. It was really hard to get, so I didn't ever feel entitled to it. I wanted to earn it every day because I felt like it was a gift. And that was kind of how I tried to play.
Well, and now you're in this situation with what you do, and I know that you've done coaching and you do all this. And for me personally, I have a 3-year-old. He just finished his very first season of T-ball / instructional league. We have him signed up for soccer coming up here in the fall, and the biggest thing for me, and the one thing that I worry about so much with this, and is something that I know that you see a lot of times. It's helping the child and like for me, like what advice would you give when it comes to trying to encourage and help a child grow and enjoy playing sports where it's I'm not trying to be this overbearing parent, but for me, it's more like, what can I do to make sure that my son enjoys doing things like this?
Oh man. Well, I think, youth sports in our country in particular is a pretty toxic environment, really.
Yes.
To be perfectly frank, you can just flip on YouTube and see parents of 7-year-olds in fights at baseball games and ridiculous things like that because of whatever reason. And it's just everybody's trying to one up everybody else. It feels like. I think the most important thing in our in this kind of era of understanding the importance of mental health is to continue to teach your children that their performance on the field is not who they are as a human being. It's simply an overflow of any gift that they've been given. And of course you want to provide your child with opportunities to cultivate that gift to its fullest potential. But along the way, you got to understand that, that is not who you are. I coach my son's 15U travel team, and it's been a real blessing to get to do that. But we try to use baseball as a platform to teach these kids how to be, God-fearing, kind-hearted, hard-working, productive citizens. And if you can change your focus from how am I going to throw 97 miles an hour as a fourth grader to, how am I going to love my teammate well, that's a whole different discussion and a whole different animal when it comes to developing the innermost part of your child.
Well, and that's the reason why I asked you that, because, I did travel ball. I did that. I was from about the age of 12 all the way through college. Like I was playing on travel ball teams every single summer. And it's one thing when you're a freshman in high school or something along those lines to kind of do that. But like a couple of maybe a month or so ago, I was in Chattanooga and I worked a 6U baseball tournament, and it was all for travel teams, and they were from Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee here. And I heard some parents talking to each other about the schedule coming up, and they're just like, yeah, after this tournament here in Tennessee, next weekend we're going to Pennsylvania, and then, next weekend we're going to Ohio, and, coming up in, the 4th of July, we're going to be doing this, and then coming up on Memorial Day and all this, we're going to, Arizona and Texas, and I'm like, your kid is 6. Like, they're 6 years old. Like, is rec ball, like, dead? Because I feel like, especially with that age, like 6U and those types of things, it's all about this toxic world of parents just trying to one up each other and trying to get a scholarship for their kid who's only 6 years old.
Yeah, that's hard to speak on everybody's behalf on that, but I would say from my personal point of view, we are kind of living in this culture where you just want your child to not miss out, right? Like you're thinking that if you don't do whatever it is you think you've got to do as hard as you can possibly do it, that your child is going to miss out on an opportunity. And I would encourage, I have to encourage myself in this all the time, but instead of having that thought, of the fear of your child missing out, kind of transplant, this notion that, you have an opportunity to build your child up into a good man. And how can I do that more? Like if your focus
Right.
becomes on, I don't want my child to miss out, to how can I develop a really good man or woman, or girl, then it changes the whole conversation.
Well, and I think that a lot of people have, like kind of lost sight of that with travel ball and all this other stuff. And I think for me as a parent, that's one thing that I always worry about. And I know that we're wrapping up with you now and we got to let you go. But, when I was reading your book, it was before I ever even knew that I would get to have this conversation with you right now and get to talk to you about some of the things that I read. And man, I just want to say thank you for being so open and being so honest about your childhood, about your life experiences, about the things that you went through in high school and all the things that you went through, mentally as well as physically, and the fears and the worries and all this other stuff, because, especially the stuff about you when you were a kid and, when you were in high school, like that alone, hearing what you went through and reading what you went through and seeing all of that stuff, like, it made me want, and it still to this day makes me want to be a better parent for my son, because I don't want him to go through some of the things that you went through. And it broke my heart. Like it really, really did. Like it broke my heart to know that there was a child and there was a kid and there was this teenager that was going through some of the things that you went through, because it shouldn't be like that. And I don't know how you take it. I really don't know how you take what I'm telling you right now, but I'm basically just trying to say thank you and it's trying to come off as a compliment in this, because you doing this really just kind of put a drive in me to be a better parent than what I was, and every single day trying to be that better parent. And I just want to say thanks, man. I really, really do.
Well, I appreciate that a lot, and I take that as a real encouragement. So thank you for saying that.
No, thank you so much. And RA, we really appreciate you. And I appreciate you coming on and talking with us on the Strike Zone and sharing your life stories, man. I really do appreciate it. Now, okay, yeah, I got a little bit of emotional, okay, but it's true. And I see people in the comments like, be a better parent. No, look, not that I was ever a bad parent, or at least I don't think I am. It's one of those things of if you do not know all the stuff that Ari went through, go find his book wherever I wind up. You can be like me. You can do the Audible copy, or you can get the hardback. You can get the paperback. It's on Amazon. It's probably in every single bookstore that you go to throughout the state of Tennessee. And so it's powerful, and it really, really is powerful. And I really appreciate him coming on and sharing his life story and opening up to us, because, man, he didn't have to open up to me like that. I mean, seriously, I'm just this guy that reached out and he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And for him to be that open and honest with me, I really do appreciate it. I really do. And RA, thank you so much. I really do. Now, next week, we come back. It is going to be Gwinnett Stripers Week. The AAA affiliate of the Atlanta Braves will be in town right here at First Horizon Park. Make sure that you're here. 7:05 first pitches throughout the week. You've got fireworks night coming up on Friday, Hit City Saturdays as well. Obviously, family fun Sundays. All of that taking place next week. We will be back as well. And as I'm seeing the comments throughout the chat, and I just cannot tell you, thank you enough for watching tonight, for hopping on no matter where you are. And I will also have to say, if you did miss anything in any part of RA's discussion that we just had, go follow us, and wherever you get your podcast, subscribe there, 104.5 The Zone, as well as the Strike Zone. And the very moment that we post this and it goes live, you will get that notification. So until next week, have a great night. We will talk.